Hey everyone, welcome back to the number one book review podcast on the planet. I'm your host, Jonathan Porticalian. And in today's episode, we are going to be interviewing Miss Genesis Kemp. She has a pedigree. Uh, it's a mile long. So I'm not even going to try because there's so many things in it. She's going to tell you all about it. But she's awesome. She's got a book called The Chocolate Drop in America, Corporate America. That's linked below, so go check that out. My affiliate link, and you're not going to want to miss this podcast, guys, because talking about a lot of things. First off, the stigma when it comes to corporate America, when it comes to women and women of color. We also talk about family, talk about the world as we know it. Talking about her book, some of the principles that are in her book. We are talking about so many things that you can apply to your life and use as example through this book and through her story. All right, y'all. With that being said, let's get into it. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And um, what, give us a little bit of your background, just 10, 15 minutes of your story and how you got into podcasting and how you wrote your first book.
Okay, so my story, I come from a corporate background. So I spent 15 years in corporate America as a whole. 12 of those years were spent in the oil and gas and energy sector. So definitely the good old boys club, where I quickly learned how to climb the corporate ladder. I started over not just once in my career, but twice. So the first time I was working for a small corrosion company. So as mom and pop had no idea that I was going to fall into oil and gas because my whole plan was to go to school to be a pediatrician. And I just had this plan picked out with my parents, like, you're going to be a doctor. Started working at the cancer center. I ended up getting laid off and I quickly needed to find a job to fulfill the co-op requirements. Fell into oil and gas. Stayed with that small company for 4.5 years up until I worked my way into a manager position, which was HSC, so health, safety, and environmental. And then, my salary was capped out. I was running a fabrication shop on top of the shop guys and the other warehouse. So a lot of manufacturing as well as inside the office type of stuff. And I had no assistant. And I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore because I'm doing more work and not getting compensated anymore. So that led me to switching gears and just I wanted to work for a bigger company with international ties because I wanted to travel. And I went to a Fortune 500 company and I thought, okay, I already have all this experience and a degree under my belt. So why am I being slotted as an administrative assistant? And I'm like, this kind of sucks. And it was hurtful, but then I learned that I had to humble myself because when you're switching gears and going to a bigger company where nobody knows you, they don't know your work experience or anything outside of what you put on your resume. So I was an admin for 4.5 years, definitely humbling. Then I went on to raw material coordination, where I managed a commodity, which is PP, which is polypropylene. For those of you listening, polypropylene is a form of plastics. Then after that, I did trade regulations and compliance. And I'm like, you do realize I have a supply chain degree in logistics. Why am I being slotted in trade regulations? And then I have minors in purchasing and OLS, which is organizational leadership and supervision. So nowhere in that tells you that I want to do trade regulations and deal with sanctions and government stuff. So it was a stretch activity for sure. So I stayed in that role for 3.5 years, where I managed 3 global distributors, did a lot of proprietary information, and then I also managed 1 freight forwarder up until February of last year when I got laid off. And that led me down the podcasting journey and the entrepreneurship route as a whole. So I'm going to pause there, see if you have any questions so far before I continue.
No, I'm just listening, getting a grip on it. So when you said you're an administrative assistant, correct?
Yeah, I was. And then I quickly moved up the ranks.
Okay. So you're doing all the paperwork, all the scheduling, all the managing the different suppliers and whatnot. Is that what your job was?
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can continue.
So then, after I got separated from the company in February of last year, my last role was trade regulations and compliance, as I mentioned. When I did separate from the company, they did give me a 20,000 salary increase, and they bumped up my classification level, which is also CL. So just putting the context there, from a 15 to a 22, only because I was just sick and tired of just being passed over. And I spoke up in the vice president's meeting, and 1 week from me speaking up, it's like, okay, woo, you're getting $20,000 salary increase. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then your CL is bumping from a 15 to a 22. But I had already knew that my book was out on the market. I was mainly focusing on promoting the book, which is Chocolate Drop in Corporate America from the Pit to the Palace. So, on top of my day job, I was doing a lot of guest appearances for different podcasts, and that's what kind of opened the avenues for media releases. So I've been in a few magazines now. I've been on over 440 something podcasts. Then CEOs reached out to me to host their podcast, so I was working for three different CEOs simultaneously. So that was quite a bit to juggle because each CEO has their niche. So I've worked for a SEO CEO, which is search engine optimization, worked for a digital strategist. Then the last one I worked for was one that really specialized in leadership spotlight with different 6 to 7 figure earners. So
Nice.
it was a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. Just to backtrack a little bit, what was that ranking that you said you went from a 15 to a 20? What did you call that?
Classification level is what CL stands for, and I went from a 15 to a 22 within a week.
And classification for what exactly?
So it's how your pay structure is and what group you rank in.
Okay, because I have no idea about anything when it comes to corporate. I've been, if I haven't worked for my dad's company for since I was 5 years old, to running my own now, like I've had I'd say a total of 2 jobs my entire life.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, and then like nothing W-2. So like if any other jobs I had was like working on a farm, um, and then just construction. Yeah. So if you want to count that, it'd be really three. Training. I trained. Started out working construction when I was 5. Just coming to work, here and there with my dad. Started going more serious, more consecutive, like when I was about 7, 2 days a week, and then just kind of went up from there. And then was full time at 16 when I got my driver's license, and then I went to Minnesota for 3 years to train police and military dogs. That was my second
Mm.
job, and then in between there, working on the farm. But yeah, I have no idea, so I'm just all entrepreneurial, kind of like my whole world was.
Wow, and that's pretty interesting. So construction, training police dogs, it's definitely two different things there, and then the farming in there.
Yep, yep, for sure. I was all over the place. Just it was, the training the dogs deal was really a break from the construction side because honestly, I was just so burnt out, and I wanted to do something different, and at the time, I was like, I just need to do something else because I really hate what I'm doing. Doing a lot of little small remodels, getting in, doing a lot of demo work, a lot of just flipping houses kinda deal, except we weren't flipping them. We were working for people who were flipping them. So, and then on this internship to work with one of the I'd say he's top 5 in the world, German Shepherd breeders and, trainers. So he's working dog is what you really classify it as, and so I lived with him for about a year and 9 months, and, and then after that, I kinda figured out, you know what, I really just wanna do real estate, and then kinda do my own thing. So from there, just kind of went from where it's at now, and then me and my brother run a pool company. That's kind of like my main. my main thing is building that, and then now this is the podcast is kind of my second deal right now. I'm building up my brand that way. So
Super cool. And thank you for sharing because it's definitely versatile there. And we're both from different backgrounds, but of course we could like see how we get intersect. Um, so the just I'm gonna jump back into the book part here, Jonathan.
yeah.
So the book
What is the name
was
of it?
Chocolate Drop in Corporate America
Okay.
from the pit from the pit
Got
to
it.
the palace.
Got it. I tried getting a copy on Amazon or somewhere. Is there not available yet? Just the Kindle or?
So the first edition is only available on the Kindle. My publisher pulled the hard copy because I released a second edition last year in February to just capitalize on 2020, what happened in my life personally and professionally. And I'll get into that a little bit more because it ties in with the book. So when the book came out, the first edition came out in May. So a little bit around the time of the whole Black Lives Matter movement, had no idea a movement like that was going to jump off. So people are like, oh, you wrote this book around the Black Lives Matter. And I was like, oh, no, I didn't. I wrote it about, my career and just really navigating in the good old boys club because when you're a woman, then put a woman of color. Then the third layer, I am first generation American. So my dad was South American and my mom is West Indian. So she's Caribbean. And people are like, oh, well, you're not like a typical black person. And I'm like, what is a typical black person? Or you're not all the way foreign because you weren't born overseas. And I'm like, well, hell, let me just be me. Can I just be great? Um,
Yeah.
And so all of those things, it was like very hard to kind of fit in, or whenever something would happen, they would expect you to be the spokesperson for the entire racial group. And I'm like, I cannot speak for everyone in the racial group, but I could speak for Genesis and my experiences. And of course, I saw things differently when it came to racism and whether it's systemic racism or oppression, because I never experienced it until I went to work in the chemical plant. And that was like my first experience. And I remember like telling my fiance, who's now my husband, about it. And he's like, well, you just have to have thick skin. That's just the way the world is. And I'm like, no, like, because I've never saw that because like my grandmother on my dad's side was half white, half black. So obviously mixed race there. And then, my family's like the freaking United Nations, I say. My brother's wife is Indian descent, so she's Trinidadian and Guyanese. My oldest brother, his wife is African. She's Cameroonian, so their daughter is truly African American. My sister's kids are half white, so um,
Nice.
then I have Canadians in my family, so it's just a little bit of everything. So I was like, oh, I've always just, hung out with other people, other racial groups. Like my family is
Yep.
very diverse. So whenever someone told me what gives you the opportunity to be here, and I'm like, I went to a tier 1 university, I have a degree, I earned my slot. And then I just said, you know what? I just was sick and tired of like being told no. I was sick and tired of being in the box. So that last day when I had that performance review with my supervisor, I just like literally pulled out my phone and I wrote the words chocolate drop in corporate America. Had no idea that it was going to turn into a full blown book until I met another author and she was just telling me about her schedule, Jonathan. She's like, yeah, I go to Starbucks during the day and, I play with my kids and I go to these mom things. And she was just doing all this stuff. And I'm like, during the day? And I'm like, where do they do that at? And then she was telling me all this fun stuff that she was doing. And she's like, yeah, I make my own schedule. And then I was like, you know what? Can I have your number? And it was like, and I was like, I told my husband, I went from, guys pulling my numbers to me pulling chicks' numbers. And I said it as a running joke. And I was like, babe, I pulled her number at church. A woman's event. So I sat on it for a little bit. And then one day I just reached out to her. I was like, hey, Tyra, you really left the impression on me. Would you be open to a coffee chat or date at Starbucks? Let me know. And a day or two went by. Then finally she hit me back up and she's like, yeah, sure, I would love to. So we met up at Starbucks and then we were just chatting. And then she told me that she was an author and she's also a foster mom, and she was telling me all this other stuff, right? So she's like, "Oh, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "No, I don't think they make any money doing that. Like, at least oil and gas pays well." And she's like, "No, no, you should really think about it." And she's like, "Do you have any pieces that you wrote?" Because I told her, "Yeah, I do like to write, but it was more for therapy and leisure, not to like put it on blast for the world to see." So I shared to him. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is really good. Like I can hear the tone of your voice. I can visualize." And she was telling me all this stuff. She was like pumping me up. So that is metaphorically when the baby was born, and it started growing inside of me, and the book was my baby. It was my way to put something out in the world, to let people know, even though this is what I went through in corporate America and the crap did hurt, it strengthened me personally and professionally, because I knew that I wasn't going to compromise my morals and my values to get ahead. Or like one segment that I did, it was a real and raw with some guy, and I was like, I didn't give any head to get ahead. I did it mainly based on my merits and just my educational background and just networking, because they all say your network is your net worth. So I was like, who do I need to connect with on a personal and professional level to get in with the people who already know when the next jobs are coming out, the salary treatments, and etc. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the funny thing is about like people putting in your box, whether it's based off of like you're a woman, man, or black, white, whatever it is, at the end of the day, there's always going to be that one person or a couple, that just they just don't get it. And the racist train is kind of like took off pretty big, and but that was never a thing for me growing up. Like we just, I come from a very Christian background, and it's just like it doesn't matter the color where you come from. Like God takes you who you are, and doesn't care. And so that's how I was brought up. And so even down to the saying some words about different cultures, people say they're derogative. Well, we did it to each other because I've been raised with. I got Mexicans that work with me. I got a couple. My electrician, he's a black guy. My secretary's a black woman. Awesome. It doesn't matter to me at all. And so when everything's like the whole corporate, not the corporate, but the whole media thing, and I got my own opinion on the whole matter, but it's the end of the day, you're gonna find someone who's got something against you when it doesn't matter what it is. Whether they don't like the way you look, what color you are, how smart you are. Most people are jealous of you anyway because you're smarter than them. And that's a big thing, especially men get very intimidated by women that are smarter than them. And I'm sure you've experienced that a lot, yeah?
Oh yeah, I've been called, "Oh, you're such a bee. You're very aggressive." I've been pulled to the side where my supervisor has told me the engineers don't want to work with you because you're very aggressive. And I was like, well, if David said the same exact thing I said, he gets seen as confident, go getter, or whatnot. Here I am saying the same exact thing, but telling you, okay, we need to start this fracking. We need to start drilling the wells. We have X amount of days to turn over this project, demob, and all of this stuff. And I'm seen as bossy, aggressive, the B word, a witch, angry black woman. But he says the same exact freaking thing that I say, and he's seen differently. Why is that? And I was like, just take away our sex, take away the way that we look, and put us on paper. Don't we not have the same exact accolades? The only thing that's different is our outward appearance, our anatomies, where we come from, and that. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're here to produce at a certain level, and we're here to assimilate to make the company money, because without making money, no one is going to get a paycheck. So why the hell can't we put aside our differences and just really come together?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about making money. So it's crazy. Like to me, I just don't really get it. Like if she's performing well over him, like okay, cool. Now you had the best idea and it worked out. All right, I'm gonna listen to you next time. I don't care. Like I don't have that much, ego and arrogance that like, or I'm not gonna listen to you because you're a woman, even though you have the best idea. I don't care about that enough to disregard the fact that it's going to make us more money and be more profitable. And a lot of other things go with it. But like, yeah, that mindset I don't get. And but there's a lot of guys, man, that just they get put on a pedestal in their titles and their job, and they just think they own the world and they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Mhm. I've even had like a direct report, and it was like sly sexual harassment. So it was my first business travel. So we were going down to Orlando to represent one of my distributors, right? And the only thing that was different was he was a direct manager with no reports. And at that time, I was an IC, so individual contributor. So I was like, okay, I'm staying at this hotel. And he's like, oh, well, I think we should stay over here. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I am not staying at an extended stay in a different city where that's not even on the ranking based on our T&E, which is travel and expenses. I'm going to stay at the Hilton or the Marriott. Then he sends me, oh, well, do you think that you could change my hotel to match yours? And I'm like, no, but your admin can. Like, we're in this sense, we're equals. And then so he ends up changing his hotel. Then it comes to the rental car. Oh, well, I think we should share a car. And I'm like, okay, are you going to be on the same flight? The details, because by that point, I'm not going to be doing your travel arrangements for you because I have my own stuff to do. So then we finally get there. I go to my room or whatnot, and I was like, okay, we'll meet back to strategize over dinner to see how we're going to target our client, right? So then we get to dinner, and he's like an older Caucasian guy. He's like, so what do you think people are saying about, you and I sitting here together, older guy with a nice African American woman? You're dressed so nice. And I'm like, well, first of all, you're married, I'm married. I don't give a flying saucer what people are saying. This is business. And it's obviously why we're sitting across the table from one another, not side by side or anything like that. And I was like, this is a business trip and it's solely business. And I felt like I held my ground in that manner, because whenever you start to travel with high ups, like people start to say, oh, you're traveling with this executive, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And the office begins to talk. But I went there because I knew this project, because I was the first person on this assignment ever in the company to, talk about, okay, how are we going to take these products? How are we going to export it? How are we going to get our distributors in place? How is it going to, mesh up with the legalities to make sure that we're not hit with any tariffs, which are the taxes or anything like that? And I learned all of that from the ground up with no experience. And I felt like whenever people started talking, I was like, it's no one's business. But for you to come at me like that, there was no need for you to have to even bring that up, because it's not even work related. And quite frankly, like, you just making a sly remark on how I'm dressed or how I'm look, that how does that have to do with my work performance and me dressing a certain way? Like, yes, like I am, a different race, and I can't help that I have more curves in certain areas than others, but I'm not going to dress like a freaking man to, appease your ego or how
Yeah.
you see me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. People are just weird. That's a fact. I mean, and I feel like, uh, I think. What do you think? Do you think the people that are kind of higher up in corporate America have kind of like I get what I want kind of mentality?
In a sense, because I feel like there's a lot of entitlement, because it's like, you're either going to do this or I'm going to make your ranking suffer, depending on which oil and gas company you work for. Because at mine, there was forced rankings where you were ranked against your peers, and whatever you got, there was no disputing that ranking. So either if you were in, like, for example, I'll put it here so the audience can understand. So if you were an MPT, which is managerial, professional, or technical, so your engineers, your geophysicists, your geoscientists, technicians, or whatnot, you're MPT. So you're ranked in top third, middle third, or bottom third. Then you have another bucket, which is OCA, which is office, clerical, and administration. So your admins, maybe some paraprofessionals, and maybe some technicians based on your skill levels and competencies. So then you're ranked A, B, C. And if you get to a D, just start packing your box to get on out the door. um, and they expect you to compete with your peers, but then there's a part of the ranking where your peers review you, and that is taken into consideration with your ranking. So if I obviously know I'm ranking with my peers, then don't you think you need to be on your A game? And it's really going to create some tension with you and your peers, because that's the same person you're going to be ranked with mid-year or end of year, and they have a say into your performance, because they'll be like, okay, Genesis worked with me on this project. She delivered this, she didn't do that, or whatnot. So I feel like whenever you are in that type of work environment, it definitely makes it more competitive, and the cattiness comes out, whether you're a male or you're a female. Because some men, they do some sly stuff. No lie. No lie.
No doubt. So you think, because I know I've read in some books, and I can't remember which ones exactly, that this structure in a lot of corporate companies, they kind of change it around, and they do better with teamwork, associated on like a marketing campaign. They were doing, I think they were doing studies on, like, they had two or three teams, and whoever beat it, like, it was a team effort. And then they kind of left it, I think they just left it up to themselves to kind of keep each other accountable to maintain the greatness of the team. But how do you think to get rid of that um, in the corporate world? Like, because I can see, if you're ranking each other, by a survey or whatever you're doing, I mean, it's like it can be super biased in a lot of ways, just because you want to get farther ahead, and then whatever. But don't you think there should be kind of like some team aspect involved, to where, like, there's sections of the company where you're working together, and if your team succeeds on the project or whatever, your team gets rewarded, and then maybe like a voting system, like, hey, he did the most work, who was the most productive, who carried you through, and then, like, whoever got voted up or whatever, maybe he got a bonus, or she, or whatever. How do you think? You ever do you have any thoughts on that, or on that kind of structure at all?
I definitely think just having a collaborative structure in that manner would definitely be more conducive in a corporate environment, because then you take away the WIFM method, which is what's in it for me. And then you start to see it from a holistic vantage point, where what's in it for we. Like, we're coming together for the same goal, the same commonalities, and we're working better when we're together versus creating that division.
Yeah, and teamwork is the most powerful anyway, right? Like, you need each other one way or the other. I mean, for my team, there's a small group of us. I've got, two secretaries. One's part time, one's full time. Got my brother, CEO. I'm the president, and I do a lot of the on site work. Jared, he does part, but most of it is sales and marketing. But um, and then I got my guy that works with me. But you know, if we're just competing against each other, like, it's create a lot of division, but we all work together, and we get a lot done. And so when I succeed, when I'm getting my pools built, because I'm a pool builder, when I build my pools faster, the girls that are working in the back office, they're more successful, and then at the end of the year we do end year bonuses, and then, like, and because of them, they're doing their permits, the paperwork, the filing, the billing, all that stuff properly. I can do my job. So, like, it's a buddy system, and taking away teamwork in a company is a big mistake for sure.
Yeah, and I even think, like, with team buildings, like, there was a period when the oil and gas industry wasn't doing good. So 2020, like, and part of 2019, you could kind of see the rocky things based on the trend lines. Then 2020, obviously, with the pandemic, and then a little bit into 2021, the oil and gas was not doing well. So you saw the morale began to decline, and so they took away some privileges with the company credit card. There was times where I couldn't spend on my company credit card. You took away privileges with traveling, like, versus, like, if you were gonna fly somewhere, depending if it was like domestic or international. So, like, a lot of times when we fly international, we fly business. So you saw from going from business to domestic, and you're like, wait, okay, so I'm going to the back. Um, then like I would have a car service pick me up and take me to the airport. So and some they're nice cars, like the limo service, they'll come pick you up and drop you off. So it's like, oh no, if you're going X amount, then you need to drive your car and park it, or you need to do the carpool system and different stuff. So you start to see how some of that was taken away. So that also lowered people's morales because you didn't have that perks. And then another thing was with team building activities, like sometimes we'll do top golf, or we'll go out and like there's like the regular golf, or there may be paintball, or whatever the case may be. And you couldn't really do team building. So especially if you were created a new team that you were forming, one of the ways to meet your other team members is go out to lunch or do a team building activity and learn people's strengths, not only in a work setting but outside of work. And when you can't do that, it's like, oh my gosh, so I'm just going to work for these 8 hours. There's nothing to look forward to except a paycheck.
Yeah, yeah, because I think I would, for me, I would really thrive in that because I have a, tendency to be the chief, and so like I mean I like to lead. I think feel like that's part of my just being a business owner. That's kind of my one of my strong points. But going and hanging out with people, being able to point out when someone has improved and encourage them and just like, all right, I want you to cover my back here, 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 especially like in a paintball setting. That's like a really cool dynamic. But if you don't have that at all, that for yeah, you're for right. I would definitely hate it for sure, I think.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of really just did suck. And whenever you're like a team or you're like a team leader, you have to tell them, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't have a Christmas party this year because we have no money." Or they're like, "Well, Genesis, do you think you could go talk to Derek about it?" And I was like, "Why do I have to go?" And okay, well, maybe we can have a potluck. And then it got to the point where one year, one of my engineers and I got really, really close, and he lived out on a few acres. He had horses and cows and stuff. So I was like, "Hey, Tim, like, I would really like to have this party, but I'm looking for a vendor." So I'm like alluding, but like dropping little hints. He's like, "Oh, well, I'll let you use my house. So you just plan everything. I'll do the meats and stuff, and then you just tell the rest of the people on the team to bring the sides." And I was like, that was so totally dope. Like, who would open up their house to like, the team, such your intimate setting? Like, I know my husband, he would kind of be taken back because he's like, our house is our sanctuary or whatnot, our place of peace. But that was our workaround. Since okay, you're not going to give us the money to have a company sponsored event, well, let's still have fun and bring people together to raise that morale. Yeah, I know it's not Perry's, I know it's not the steakhouse that we're used to, we're not popping these nice bottles of wine, but we could still get together. And then the other aspect we did was around the holidays, there are a lot of kids and families who are less fortunate than we are. So what we did was bring a toy and you wrap it up, and then we unwrap the toy, and you kind of talked about why did you get that toy, and then at the end of the night we donated it to Toys for Tots.
Oh, nice. That's cool. Um, Honestly, that's the way I grew up with just hanging out at other people's houses. We do like a each month in our church that we would go to someone's house and they would kind of host a picnic kind of deal. And so we go from like there's probably like 15, 15 families, one to the other each month. So that was really cool. Then we have like a song service and then we just all play football and whatever. So corporate events, yeah, they're pretty cool. But going hanging out someone's little farm would be much cooler to me anyway. And it's more real, more authentic, and you get to just really kind of loose. You're not trying to impress too many people, and you're just kind of being yourself, and then you kind of get along better and vibe together.
Yeah.
Eh, so I got a question. What was because you've been in the oil and gas, what's been the one thing or a couple of things that's been really causing all these crazy prices, and then like what you've seen within your company, like just being from that background, what what's kind of alludes to that? Like what's the correlation there?
So that I really do not have like the set answer there because I've never like been on that side in the oil and gas. I've mainly been like in operations or the logistics side of it. So it's hard to kind of know like what is the cause and the correlations that's driving the oil and gas prices. But I do know like with the recent war between Russia and Ukraine, that has a lot to do with it. I still have some friends who are involved in the industry, and this former company that I worked with pulled out all their assets and ties in Russia based on the war. So all of the people that were working on a specific team pretty much have no jobs. So they either need to apply for another job within the company or they'll be relocated. And you kind of you kind of can say, okay, I want to work in this function, but that you may not necessarily get to work in that function because it's based on business needs, based on what skill sets you bring, and etc. So I know that is one factor that is playing into the gas prices.
Amongst lots of others for sure that
Yeah.
I could mention. But the let's jump into the book. So how does the is that just your story of being in the corporate world and coming from your background and coming up into it to end up leaving it, or because you said you left your job, right? This year?
Last year
Last year.
via a layoff. So
Okay.
last year was a hard year for me. I lost my dad in November of
Oh,
2020. So my
sorry.
dad was like super close, him and I. He was like one of my best friends. We did everything together since I was a kid. Um, and it was very, very hard, especially now that my husband and I are beginning to grow our family and just not having my dad there. It does suck. And I tell people it sucks like the smell of mothballs. Um, and my dad passed due to medical negligence. So, in the height of the pandemic, my dad went to the hospital because his blood sugar levels were elevated, and there was nothing I could do at home. I tried everything. So, they told me to take him to the hospital. 3 days later, my dad was paralyzed from the waist down. Then, after just pushing and probing, we found out that my dad had a stroke that they did not detect and it went unnoticed. So, of course, his conditions got worse and it exasperated. Then, pushing and probing, because I'm very inquisitive, if you haven't told, and I'm very vocal, found out that my dad was given the wrong medication. That was not documented. Then I do have friends in high places. So, like, one of my good friends is married to an attorney. So, I had him draft up a document so I could push to get the medical record so I could go through it with a fine tooth comb. Then I found some inefficiencies that was not told to us. And, it was like really me and my sister in law, who's a nurse practitioner, that really advocated a lot for my dad. Then the last straw was 8 days after my dad had a surgical procedure, they called me and told me that they found my dad unresponsive in his hospital room. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense because his hospital room was like literally right across from the nurse's station. And I was like, okay, you didn't have him on a telemetry. So normally after patients have surgery, you normally have them on a telemetry to monitor their heart rhythms just to make sure everything's up and up. He was a diabetic patient. He came out of surgery. Then, because of the negligence in rehab, he got a bed sore. So, and that opened up. And anyone dealing with diabetics, if there's a wound that opens up, it takes a longer healing process due to the way that their body heals and the skin forms. So, then my dad got septic. So, then he had to have several blood transfusions that I had to consent for. And just everything kind of happened. And then they're like, oh, well, we're in the middle of the pandemic. And I was like, well, you signed a freaking oath to do your job. I'm sorry if things are overwhelming, but this is what you signed up to do. If you don't like your professor, change it. Like, we all have choices in life, but I don't think you should make patients suffer. And so I was really bitter, began to question God or whatnot, but it wasn't until like I really sat and thought about it and I said, you know what? 2020 was far from perfect vision. And I did it like a pun on words because I wear glasses. I obviously don't have 2020. And I was like, but it was a slap of reality.
Yeah.
Because no matter where you were from, no matter how you were raised, no matter what socioeconomic status you were in, no matter what your political stance was. We all had to hit that period of reset button when the world shut down, when we were forced to combine in our homes, and when we had to, pretty much learn what the new normal was going to be, and if we were ever going to go back to a quote unquote period of normal.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So I put that in the book for
yeah.
2020.
Yeah. That's important. And I'm so sorry about your dad because um, my dad passed away in 2019 from a brain injury, I guess would sum it up. He fell, hit his head when he was jumping on a pogo stick of all things. And, 2.5 weeks later, from about 2 hours after he hit his head, he completely blacked out. From then he was gone. But
Mhm.
the man, the medical system is, I've got a lot of words for it. One of which is very much not helpful in about a large spectrum of ways. And I just had a baby a week ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was a fight to even just deal with these people about all this nonsense they wanted him to do. And so, like, I had, he was born 6 pounds, which wasn't crazy small, but it was, he's still a small little baby. And he had a irregular heartbeat, which me to I guess to sum it up, he was just at a low pulse rate when he
Mhm.
was sleeping. And then when he was with mama, everything was normal high. His oxygen was always high. He dipped one time in his oxygen when he was born, like a couple hours after he's born. And so they kind of use those two things to want to take him to a bigger hospital to do like a ton of testing for his heart because they'd have no idea what it was. And so I'm like, wait a minute, you want to take my baby who's barely 24 hours old away from mama, which is like crucial for the next 2, 3 weeks of his life. And I mean crucial because there's an insane amount of studies done on that. Skin to skin with mama and keeping him with her at all times. And then you want to hook him up to IVs, run blood tests. You want to keep him in a hospital, which is just basically a pool of germs when it comes down to it. And you want to do this all for the sake of just a low pulse rate. And I was like, you know, I have a lot of comfortable, like I'm very comfortable with things, and I understand like people aren't perfect, things happen, and this is not a cause for concern. And I do not have to be a medical professional to understand that because, for one, enough oxygen. Somebody could have a low pulse rate. Heck,
Mhm.
people have their hearts skip a beat, and there's nothing wrong with them. Or the people who have holes in their heart, and there's nothing wrong with them. So you want to put all this stress on him when, in the long run, for sure, is going to really, shatter his health. It could very well do it. And I was like, I'm not going to take that risk. I was like, you guys want to sit there and tell me all the nurses were worried? I'm like, no. And what ended up happening was God really worked it out because um, a ultrasound. They have a thing that does an ultrasound for his heart, and so she came on her day off and did an ultrasound on his heart. It took like an hour, and when she got done, she was like, "I can't really tell you exactly because I'm not a pediatrician, but she's like, it's nothing I'd call the doctor over." And I'm
Mhm.
like, and she took probably, I don't know, 400 or 500 pictures of his heart, so she sees like everything you can possibly see. So I'm like, well, there's proves my point again. Like, I'm really appreciative of the ultrasound, but the system is like it's covering their butt. What it ends up is, if you haven't noticed with your dad, because the same thing happened with my dad. He was in a U of L school hospital, and they're basically wanting to use him for basically a school experiment. They were supposed to do a treatment on him, and they wanted it was critical that it was done at a certain time, and they wanted to bump it up 3 hours because they had a class coming in.
Wow.
Like, it was critical. So we're like, "Really?" And so when they were telling me before they let me out, let us out of the hospitals, "We just want your baby to be safe, that's our job." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, your real job is to cover your butt because so I don't sue you because you get so many lawsuits.
Mhm.
And so you're covering yourself financially, but at the end of the day, it's not your job to keep my baby healthy, it's my job. It's my baby, and you help me deliver the baby, and help me make sure for the most part that he's doing all right. That's all I need you for. The rest is up to me, up to the real ways of healing, the natural ways of healing, the way God intended it to be. And so, and we're done. And so he's fine. He's here. He's home. It's only been a week, but we keep him. He's eating. He's going to the bathroom. He sleeps. That's normal life. He's fine. So God gave me that wisdom, and just with my years of being around the baby world, because I'm from a family of 12,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so I have all that knowledge from my mom, my sisters. There's 12 grandbabies in the family now. So you know, I don't. We all hate hospitals. Every one of us, we really hate them, and it's so sad to see someone like your dad that you know was so many things could have been prevented. Um, but there's something you got to, like with my dad, you got to accept the fact that okay, his time has come, and God took him for a reason, and so that's kind of what we're left with,
Mhm.
because there's nothing else. But at the end of the day, it's just like you just got to be careful, and next time something happens, you just keep on it. So definitely the medical, this is a system, that's a business right there. The hospitals, that's a that's a very profitable business, and they get away with whatever they want, really.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for the passing of your dad, and once again, congratulations to the birth of your son. It's such a beautiful thing when, God gives us new life, or especially like the lost ones, because it's like people keep saying, "Oh, you're getting ready to birth the sunshine," because we've lost not only my dad, but my grandmother passed 9 months and 5 days away from my dad. And, they just left my grandmother there in the house on the floor because the hospitals were too full for COVID patients and they were on a drive by. So they said, "Oh, there's nothing that we could do," because she fell in the bathroom. And when the paramedics came, by that point, my aunt had like flipped her over and they were working on her. And, her pulse rate was very faint, but they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're on a drive-by status with all the COVID patients, so there's nothing we can do." So just imagine someone who had life, that their life could have been prolonged, but because the hospitals were at capacity and you said on a drive-by, like, is this a fast food restaurant we're driving through? Um,
Yeah.
had to lay there, and she just passed peacefully. Then recently my mom's mom passed, and she was 99, and even though she was 99 years old, it still hurts whenever you lose a loved one, and grief is grief. So within a year and a half, pretty much, we've lost 3 people, and then if you add in my job loss via layoff, of course I had a severance package and all that, four significant losses.
Yeah, no, you got to take it with the punches. It's hard, and if you don't get up and keep going, it'll get you down. But let's move on from there. And what else about your book are you going to be? I know on your part of your message you sent me first on Pod Match, was your part of your core pillars are educate, inspire, motivate. Now, is that kind of is that those principles in the book?
So those principles came after the book. They're the principles of the podcast, because, like I said, the podcast was birthed out of my grief journey, and it came out like it started whenever my dad passed. But some of the principles that are in the book are like my R cube method, which is refuel, refocus, and realign. And the reason why I came up with the R cube method is you have to refuel yourself so you don't hit that period of burnt out. You have to refocus, which allows you to regain your clarity and why you're doing what you're doing. So, really knowing your why and knowing who you are. And then the realignment, just like we take time to realign our vehicles, the tires after we get an oil change, and just service our cars. If we take all this time to service our cars and do maintenance on our homes, why aren't we taking that amount of time to do maintenance on who we are holistically, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're easily going to fall victim to what the world wants us to be. And we know there's so much garbage in the world nowadays with, stuff on social media, stuff in the politics, and etc. like that. And you could easily lose a sense of who you are when you're trying to follow the masses.
Yeah, 100%. You got to create your own identity and take control of your own life. If nothing else, out of this whole past 2-3 years that you've learned is you have to take control of your own thoughts and your own control what you can control what you can control, and that's your mind and what information you put in it, and what and the byproduct of that is what comes out. So when you just believe anything and everything, there's be sure that if when there comes to something, and when it comes to either the vaccines, the gas and oil, the any type of the administration, whatever you want to whatever you want, however you want to say it, put it, whatever it is, there's always something else. There's never just like okay, that's the problem. There's probably 30, 40 things that either come together to make that one thing. People's research is very is terrible. They're like, "Oh, I'm a research," or I'm not. People don't research most of all anyway, but people's research, if they do research, is Google, and then the first article that comes up. But um, just keep control of yourself, especially in these times. Your mind, what you put in it. That's what this podcast is all about, is just, focusing on yourself, so you can focus on helping your family and people around you, educating yourself, constantly filling yourself with positive, uplifting information, and, staying aware. So very important for sure. So let's talk. So that's the book. Well, when does it come out? I mean, when you putting it back online so I can get either card copy or Audible? When are you going to do an Audible for it too?
I'm thinking about doing an Audible, but I want to do it in my own voice because, it's my story, my voice,
100%.
right? The second edition is out. So it is on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart, some of the other brick and mortar stores. The book is available there in hard
Okay.
copy.
Okay, because I didn't see it. At least I didn't. Maybe I didn't search right enough, but I'll find it. I'll get
Okay.
it. You need to do Audible, and you need to do it in your own voice because that makes the book, in my opinion. And I read both. I do read it physically and audibly. Especially with driving, working. Audible is a big friend of mine. But yeah, definitely do it yourself. And along with that, because I'm gonna be picking up a copy, and so should everybody else listening to this, because with your store and background, it's gonna be a great book. I can already tell. And so, what are you doing besides? All right, let's put it this way: is your book and podcast what's keeping you going right now since you quit your job? Is that kind of your full time gig?
Yeah, definitely the podcast is definitely full time. I do like sometimes 6, 7 episodes a day and they all go up the same day because it's coffee chat style.
Nice.
um so that keeps me going on top of preparing for motherhood. That's going to be a new chapter that I walk into very soon.
Oh, so you're expecting?
Yeah.
How far along are you?
I am 5 months. So a little over
Oh,
5 months.
oh, congrats! So you're in that whole world now,
Yeah.
preparing for baby. Nice. Do you know what it's gonna be?
We're having a little girl.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
We had a boy.
I was so totally team boy because I was like, "Man, I just want a little man, like, that would be perfect." And my husband's like, "Oh, I just want a girl." And I said, "Well, I hope the Lord blesses us with twins because I would literally be 2 and done." And my husband's like, "No," because he comes from a big family. There's 8 of them, and I'm like, "Dude, we're not having 8 kids. I'm not driving a minivan." Like, all of my cars are I love power cars and muscle cars. And I was like, "I can't have the car that I want with a bunch of kids." And I was like, "The car I have now is like kind of like a mom car, and I really want something with a turbo that's souped up, like black with black on black or something." And my husband's like, "No, you're not driving that."
Hey, you can soup up an SUV. You get a Hennessy. Hennessy makes some pretty bad to the bone Suburbans.
Yeah.
Mm.
Even like I have some really good guy friends I grew up with from high school. They're part of this car club, right?
Yeah.
So there's like the GTs and they have like the Supras and there's some guys that'll come out with their Lambos or whatnot. And my husband's like, "You're not going to that." And I'm like, "Why?" "Because you're just not going to that." And I'm like,
Yeah,
like,
we'll see when you have the first one, and then you get the second one. Maybe, we'll just have one more, and then it could be like another. You never know.
so how
Other
many do
people
you have, Jonathan?
first, one at a time. Okay, one at a time. We're getting there. But I don't know. We'll see what happens, honestly, because that's our plan is just we'll get through this one, get through it for a while, and then go to the next one, and we'll see. So
Yeah,
yeah. Um. So on the podcast, when did you start it? Curious.
November 2020.
Okay. And what's your what's the platform that performs the best, if you can even tell, because the stats on podcasts are horrible.
So I like Anchor.fm. One, I like it because it's free 99. I also like it because when I went out of the country to visit my family in the Caribbean, I could just use the app on my phone to record like some of the segments. So I did like that part because I am glued to my phone at times, but learning to break that away. So I really like that platform. And then Anchor distributes to, Apple, Spotify, and some of the other ones. So I like the fact that I didn't have to, when I start, do all the legwork to get visibility because they were already partnered with some heavy hitters in the podcasting space. I do wish that there was some other capabilities like metric wise where I'm able to like really look at the nitty gritty so I could measure myself. So what I use for my metrics is listennotes.com. And that's how I found out that my podcast was ranked in the top 3% globally. So I thought that was pretty cool because not too long ago it was at the top 5%. So I've increased.
Oh, sweet. Yes, the stats are whack. I is just the Anchor, is it just kind of a distribution platform, or they also kind of have their own listening platform? Because I haven't, I'm not too familiar with it.
Yeah, there's just their own listening platform. So you could listen to other people that have podcasts. And the cool thing, too, that I like about Anchor, if you're using the app on your phone, you could send voice notes to other podcasters that have Anchor, which I thought that was pretty cool because that's the way that I reached out to some of the other podcasters where I just want to say, hey, you're doing a great job, or are you interested in collaborating or whatnot? I thought that was pretty dope to have there.
Okay, cool. I need to see about getting on it because I'm on pretty much everywhere, but I use Buzzsprout for my distribution channel, and
I
that
think
puts it
I
everywhere.
Oh yeah, we used to use that briefly when I was doing it with the two other girls, but then we've disbanded. So then after we disbanded, we just didn't keep up with it. And then outside of Buzzsprouts, we used Podbean for a little bit, but we had to pay for both of those.
Interesting. So you originally started with two other people?
Yeah, and it was Progression Over Perfection was the show that we had previously.
Yeah.
And we kind of
Um,
just met online, like on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" I was like, "Sure." And we just all would get together and do a podcast.
nice. When you said you had 3 books out, yeah?
Yeah.
What's the other 2?
The the first two are my book, which is this that I'm holding up, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America.
Yeah.
Then the other ones are collaboration. So I don't know if I could grab them. Well, let me just tell you the name. So one is called COVID-19 Stories, where the author is Carol Azam. So she's based in the UK. So I just have a contributing part of that book. The other book is coming out in this quarter. So it's a collaboration with Chad Smith. He also has a podcast called the Battle Warriors podcast, and he talks about his sobriety journey, finding God, and some other stuff like that. Can't really say too much about it since it hasn't hit the market. The other book that I've been featured in outside of the COVID-19 stories are I did one with Shanique MJ Davis where it's called Don't Let It Ruin the Life of Your Party. So it's really talking about stubbornness and how do you really overcome stubbornness. So that was a good one. And then the book mentioned, I don't have any per se literary pieces in it, but the book mentioned is The Unexpected Journey of Fire and Gold, which is by Diedrich L. Moon and Haley Moon, where he felt so strongly after reading my book that he talked about some of the systemic racism and oppression that he went through working for the US government. And former President Barack Obama got involved in his story, and he actually went up against the Board of Education for for his daughter because he was a single father at the time, and his daughter was sexually molested at school, and they did not believe his daughter. She also went through a period of depression where she was suicidal, and then based of all that was going on, he took a lot of that on internally, and he had a nervous breakdown, and the US government tried to, kind of force him out of his job without any rules for termination. So it was like wrongful termination, and he was actually hospitalized. So he said, oh my gosh, when I read your book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, even though like you were from oil and gas, I was from the US government, our stories were parallel. And he said, your book was what I needed to like force me into writing my story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sweet. So let's wrap this up. And it's been such a good conversation. So many things, and we could probably go on forever, but um, what I always ask my authors, what's the one thing before we end the show is what's your if you could pick one, what's your favorite book?
Ooh, I love this book by Mitch. I think it's Mitch Abom, The Five People You Meet in Heaven, because I read it in high school and it really resonated with me.
Nice. Five people. Right on. I've never seen that book, heard that book, so I'll have to pick it up. Write it down here. Well, Miss Genesis, I appreciate you so much for coming on and taking the time. It's been fun, and can't wait to hear about little baby girl, and that you guys are doing good here in the next 4 months.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm super excited for your baby boy. So a week old, and I know things have changed around your household when you have a little person. So congratulations there, Jonathan. And I would love to interview you on my show. So we're definitely gonna have to set that up.
Yeah. I think you did send me a link. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably sent you everything, like the podcast form, the link, and then the
Yeah.
calendar.
Yeah. And I just kind of looked over it because just with the baby and then everything else before, just like this whole last at least week, 2 weeks, it's just been like crazy, and I've had to put off interviews. And then when I get home, it's I only have like three nights I do interviews: Thursday, Friday, and then on Saturday. And then I had some last week while she was in the hospital, so I had to cancel those. And then I got another one right after this, and then I got another one on Saturday, and
Mhm.
then some more next week as well. So just
Whenever
keeping
you
the
get a
flow going.
chance.
Yep.
So, what state are you in by any chance?
Indiana,
Oh, dang it! I'm in Texas. I've been
Texas.
begging my husband for a pool. I want a saltwater pool so
Well, th
bad.
that's all we do. That's most of what we do right now, saltwater pools.
Yeah, I
Yep,
want one. My husband's
fiberglass and vinyl liners.
yeah. He said no, it's an extra liability. Our water bill will increase and the insurance on our house will go up. And I said, well, our next house, I really want a pool. My
I don't know
cousin
about
just
that.
got one and it's so nice. He has a fire pit, the saltwater pool, and then even the jacuzzi. And it's like you can control it with your phone, like the temperature. And I was like, oh, it's so nice.
Yeah, we're putting in, we put in automation systems all the time. We got one right now that's got a pool house, raised above hot tub that spills into the pool. Obviously a pool with fiberglass, and then, the inside will have a kitchen, bathroom,
Ooh.
um, all the above, so it's quite the thing. So, well, how far is your cousin away from you?
So he's about an hour and a half.
Ah,
Yeah, it's not too bad, but it's like in Houston where I live, you have to commute far anyways. Like my last commute for work was like 2 hours one way.
yeah, yeah, phew. Well, I was gonna say if you're like 5, 10 minutes away, you pay for the maintenance and everything else, and you just come hang out. So that's a lot of people do. They're like, I ain't paying for no maintenance on no pool and bills. And I'm like, hey man, if you can use the neighbor's pool, why not?
Yeah. I
Yep.
just
So yeah. Well, thank you again so much. And I'll be sure to just, look at that link. Sorry for not getting to that and see what we can work out. And hopefully we can stay in contact. And then I'll see you when we do that interview. That'd be awesome.
Okay, likewise. Thank you again for having me on, Jonathan. It was fun.
Thanks again. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
All right, bye.
Hey everyone, what is up? That was awesome, wasn't it? Still getting there with the with I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, what's up? So she's awesome. Um, that was cool. And Miss Genesis, what a story background, right? Like, um, got her podcast, got her book, Corporate America, all that nonsense and whatnot. Um, Dude, I mean, that's just so dope. So listen, pick up your copy of the book. It's going to be linked below, and be sure to subscribe. It means the world to me, as you already know. And if you're especially if you're on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're on, get that one as well. And be sure to leave me a review or a comment if you're on YouTube again. But the review on Apple Podcasts would be amazing. And I appreciate you guys, and I will see y'all next week. Peace.